Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 11 waiver wire pickups for the 2022 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 running backs, 5 wide receivers, 3 quarterbacks, and 3 tight ends. It's weird that I'm holding a 3 like this instead of this, but you get it. 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, 5 running backs, 5 wide receivers that you guys should be adding prior to week number 11. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And whether you're new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And if you have any questions about week number 11, ask down below in the comment section or in the Discord linked in the pinned comment and in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 11 waiver wire ads. We begin with my top running backs to be adding on the week, headlined by Rashad with 2A's White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they are on bye this week. White is currently owned in 45% of leagues on Yahoo Fantasy, so if you plan NFL, CBS, ESPN, any of those fantasy football platforms, then the ownership for Rashad White, as well as all the players in today's video, is going to be different. But in some cases, it might not just be slightly different, it might be drastically different depending on the website. So reports right now are that Leonard Fournette, Uncle Lenny, will be okay to play following the bye. Not here to discredit the doctors, but I wouldn't be sure that he's definitely going to play in week 12 when he returns, and I also wouldn't be sure that he's going to return to being the lead back on the team. Prior to Leonard Fournette's injury up against the Seattle Seahawks in Germany, before he was hurt, Fournette had 14 touches and Rashad White had 11 touches. Seems really close, right? Seems like maybe the fact that they were talking about Rashad White potentially taking over for the last couple of weeks might end up becoming true. Last week, Rashad White up against Seattle in Germany, like I said, 22 carries for 105 yards and was the running back 17 on the week in half PPR. Now, this is prior to Monday Night Football tonight, so he might fall outside the top 20 after tonight, but still a very solid performance out of Rashad White. Running back 56 and a half PPR points per game on the season, but those points per game on the season don't really matter because he's never really been in this situation until now. So even if Uncle Lenny returns to the team and is good to go in week number 12, it would not surprise me if Rashad White took over. And with how Rashad White has looked in bursts when he was given the opportunity, Rashad White might be a fantasy football fucking league winner at the end of the season. My number 2 running back to be picking up on the week is Buzz Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens, going up against the Carolina Panthers in Baltimore, currently owned in 49% of leagues. Currently the running back 21 on the season in half PPR points per game. We will be seeing, in my opinion, both Kenyon Drake and Gus Edwards as the 1-2 punch on this offense going forward until J.K. Dobbins inevitably returns and starts playing like shit again. He did get hurt in week number 8 up against the Bucs, and his last full game was in week number 7, so we're going to go back to look at number 7 up against the Browns. In that game, he had 16 rushes for 66 yards, and not 1, but 2 touchdowns in that game, and 1 target for 0 receptions. Now, I know that this backfield is going to be incredibly frustrating for the rest of the season. But at the end of the day, when you are playing up against a complete and utter dog shit Carolina Panthers defense, even with the risk of Kenyon Drake and Lamar Jackson being there, vulturing touchdowns from Gus Edwards, you have to talk yourself into the upside that this guy has. At number 3, we have Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the LA Chargers in LA on Sunday Night Football. We just watched the Chargers on Sunday Night Football last week, and then they flexed them into prime time again. How exciting! Everyone loves the Chargers without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Super exciting. 24% owned on Yahoo. Running back 32.5 PPR last week, week 10 up against the Jaguars. 16 rushes for 82 yards and a fumble lost. Pacheco played on 57% of the snaps. 57% of the snaps for Pacheco. McKinnon is their pass catching back. 6 receptions on 8 targets. Very nice for McKinnon. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, what did he do last week against the Jaguars? Up against a bad Jaguars defense? This motherfucker had as many snaps as I can count on one hand. He had 4 snaps. 4 snaps in week number 10. Now, I was someone that was like trying to talk myself back into, I know Clyde hasn't been the best over the last couple of weeks, but he still has the pizzazz. The team still likes him to be the guy. Sure, they named Pacheco the starter. Throw that out the window. It doesn't fucking matter. But now we're in week 11. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been an unmitigated fucking disaster outside of the first 4 games this season. So now if you can get Pacheco, go ahead and pick him up. I know he might not see a bunch of targets, everything. I actually think his targets are going to increase going forward. Pacheco's a guy that needs to be rostered. We're officially in running back handcuff season. It is almost the fantasy playoffs. We're knocking on the door of the fantasy football playoffs. Make sure that you add your handcuffs and make sure you add these valuable handcuffs that I talk about in today's video, even if you don't have the starting running back. And at this point, Pacheco's the starting running back, not Clyde Edwards-Helaire. At number 4, we have Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Cincinnati Bengals at home in Pittsburgh. 27% owned on Yahoo Fantasy. He was the running back 24 last week in half PPR and the running back 55 in half PPR points per game. Back-to-back solid games for Jaylen Warren. Week 10 up against the New Orleans Saints. 9 rushes for 37 yards, 3 receptions on 3 targets for 40 yards. Najee Harris gets banged up in that game, but it's safe to say that he's going to be good to go on Sunday up against the Bengals. But if I'm being honest with you, kind of like with Rachaad White, it would not surprise me one iota, one bit if Jaylen Warren came out and was the fucking starter. I know for years, the argument against anyone behind a running back in Pittsburgh was that Mike Tomlin loves the workhorse running back, that he will do whatever he can to have that workhorse running back, but it's starting to appear that he's not as likely to do that. Like, Harris might have to start riding the pine because Jaylen Warren looks good. Najee Harris did look good last week too, so we shall see. But even if Warren isn't the guy, he needs to be rostered because if Harris gets banged up again, knock on wood, we know root for injuries, Jaylen Warren might be fan-fucking-tastic for fantasy. At number 5, we have Elijah Mitchell of the 49ers going up against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona, currently owned in 58% of leagues. Running back 23.5 PPR last week, having shocking usage with Christian McCaffrey there. Running back 49.5 PPR points per game, week 10 up against the Chargers. 18 rushes for 89 yards, 18 carries, 1 reception on 2 targets for -1 yards. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Christian McCaffrey is fucking dead in the ditch, right? Christian McCaffrey is still a must-start running back every single week. Still a guy that you can easily see being a top 5 running back weekly, even if he's not given the crazy amount of touches he was in Carolina, because he's in a better system, better O-line, better coaching in San Francisco. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't add Elijah Mitchell, especially as a handcuff. Now we pivot to the wide receiver position, headlined by Kadarius Toney of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the LA Chargers in LA, 51% owned on Yahoo Fantasy. Last week, he was the wide receiver number 11 in half PPR, tied with his former teammate, Darius Slayton, who we're going to be talking about a little bit later. Week 10 against the Jaguars, which was last week where he had the big game. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 57 yards and a score. And this diabolical bastard, as he was walking into the end zone, started hobbling like his hammy hurt from that hamstring injury from New York, the hamstring injury. If you're listening on podcast, make sure you leave 5-star review, but I did the air quotes, injury. He was never hurt. He wanted out. Now he's in Kansas City, and now he's arisen. He's arisen. It's crazy. It is truly crazy to see. Juju hurt. I don't think Juju's going to play this week based upon how that injury looked. Now, I am as much of a doctor as Dr. Johnny Sins on the hub. So I'm not telling you that, it's a lock that he misses, but peripheral-wise, it didn't look great. Toney now could be the number 1 receiver on this team and will be, in my opinion, the number 2 receiver when Juju returns. It is risky because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in Kansas City, but the upside is super high, especially up against a bum LA Chargers defense. The Chargers defense is bad news bears. Next receiver to discuss, Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers going up against the Les Titans in Tennessee, 9% owned on Yahoo Fantasy. But before we break down the next receiver and the rest of these receivers and then the quarterbacks and then the tight ends, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at DraftKings Sportsbook. If you are a brand new user to DraftKings Sportsbook and you click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment down below and you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line, you receive $200 in free bets if your bet wins. Now, since your bet has to win, I'm going to throw this onto the screen right now. We have the perfect solution towards your bet having to win. You're going to head on over to college football where they have the biggest favorites. My number one favorite for the week for you guys to bet your $5 pregame moneyline bet on to get your $200 in free bets is the Ohio State minus 6,000 at Maryland. Bet $5 on that. If they win, seems very likely that they will. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed. Obviously, something crazy could happen, but minus 6,000 at Maryland. $5, get $200 in free bets. Or, you don't like Ohio State? You can go with Florida State versus Louisiana. I almost said Louisville. Louisiana, Lafayette, minus 2,400. I showed you guys this on the screen. Make sure you check it out again. Link down below in the video description or in the pinned comment. Make sure you take advantage of this before it disappears Houdini style. So back on into things. My number 2 wide receiver to be adding on the week is the man who shit directly on the throat or on the chest and also shit down the throat, basically, of the Dallas Cowboys. How about them boys? The Green Bay Packers going up against the Tennessee Titans this week. 9% owned. Without Romeo Doubs. Watson stepped up mightily. He stepped up to bat, and he not only hit a fucking home run, this motherfucker hit a grand slam. Wide receiver number 2 in half PPR last week. Wide receiver 58 on the season, tied with Donovan Peoples-Jones, who we're going to be talking about in a couple of minutes. Wide receiver number 2 again on the week. Wide receiver 2 on the week in half PPR. Week 10 against Dallas, 4 receptions on 8 targets for 107 yards and 3 touchdowns. Do I think he's going to score 3 touchdowns against the Tennessee Titans? Of course not. Of course not. But has he earned a strong role in this offense? I think so. They got to throw the ball. Allen Lazard didn't look the best in that game. I'm not saying you should just cut Allen Lazard, but it seems like Watson might be the number 1 receiver on this team. Good matchup against the Titans. You definitely want to add him. And number 3, we got DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones of the Cleveland Browns, going up against the Buffalo Bills. In Buffalo, 35% owned, wide receiver 25 and half PPR last week up against my Dolphins. Wide receiver 58 on the season, tied with Christian Watson. Last week up against the Dolphins in Miami, 5 receptions on 9 targets for 99 yards. 3 games in a row, back to back, with over 11 half PPR points in each game. Now, he's not a smash play every single week. He's not a guy that's going to put your team on his back. He's not going to take you over the top for you to kick the piss out of your opponent. But what he's going to do is he's going to be the safety valve in your roster. That's going to get you 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points. I doubt he has a fucking amazing game against the Bills, right? I highly doubt that. The Bills defense is good, but could he do enough to keep your team afloat, to keep your head above water? Of course. And when Deshaun Watson returns, the upside might be even higher. At number 4, we have Darius Slayton of the New York Football Giants going up against the Detroit Lions at home in MetLife, 6% owned currently. Wide receiver number 11 in half PPR last week. Wide receiver 65 on the season in points per game. Week 10 up against a bad Texans defense. 3 receptions on 4 targets, almost going 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's for 95 yards and a tug. So, this week, he gets another bad defense. A defense that's worse than the Texans. The Detroit Lions defense is soft as baby shit. It's softer than I would assume rich people's toilet paper is. Okay? It's that 10-ply shit, if they even make that. So, Darius Slayton. I love this spot. Now, is he guaranteed to be the wide receiver number 1 on this team going forward? I don't know, because they have Wan'Dale Robinson. And I know Daniel Jones isn't that great, but you don't have to be Tua, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tom Brady to pick apart the Lions defense. Even as a guy who looks like he should be doing your fucking taxes, Daniel Jones, that man is good enough to absolutely skullfuck the Lions defense. So Slayton's a guy that needs to be picked up. Final player to discuss, another former New York Giant. We got Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ. Free agent, 47% owned on Yahoo. Reports are that Odell will be signed by the end of November. We're halfway through November right now. The time in which you can add Odell is coming to a close quickly. By the end of this week, I would project his ownership's going to go up to 60%. And if you wait another week, it's going to go up even higher. Make sure you add him before it's too late. We talked about Odell last week. We're going to talk about him again here. He needs to be rostered. He wants to sign with a contending team. So maybe he doesn't go back to the Rams, but there are a lot of spots that have been talked about where Odell would be extremely fantasy relevant. Now on to the quarterback position. We just kind of talked about Daniel Jones. We got him here. Number one quarterback to stream on the week. Danny Dimes, quarterback, the New York Football Giants, going up against the Lions, 64% owned on Yahoo. Quarterback 12 last week, quarterback 12 on the season in terms of points per game. Week 10 up against the Texans. Surprisingly, he didn't do it with his legs. The Houston Texans are dead last in run defense. They're absolutely awful. They're like a fucking turnstile. Terrible. But he actually didn't rush that well against them. 5 rushes for 24 yards. Obviously, that's not a bad thing. That's positive. And I kind of made it out like that's bad, but I thought he might rush for like 100 yards. He did it with his arm. 13 completions on 17 attempts for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He could easily do the same thing against the Lions and be a top 12 quarterback on the week. At number 2, we have Marcus Mariota of the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Chicago Bears, 33% owned. There's going to be a lot of people that are like, Nick, the Falcons should pull Mariota. They should go with the backup. The backup's better. Mariota sucks, absolute donkey cock. Sure, maybe he does, but he's still decent in fantasy. Quarterback 14 last week, quarterback 17 on the season in points per game, tied with Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy Guap, Jimmy Pornstar, Jimmy G String, Jimmy Garoppolo. Week 10 against the Panthers in a game where I thought he might do a little bit better, but still top 14 quarterback in Carolina. 13 completions on 30 attempts for 186 yards and 2 scores with an interception, 3 rushes for 43 yards. The Bears defense is also dog shit. So again, it doesn't take Albert Einstein at the quarterback position to create a game plan, to create in your mind a way that Mariota gets it done easily as a top 10 quarterback, right? It's very possible. It is in the realm of possibilities. At number 3, we got a guy that you can't actually play this week. So if you have any other questions at quarterback, just leave them down below. Have any questions in general, leave it down below in the comment section. We got Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns, 37% owned. Watson is eligible to return to practice this week. He will make his season debut 2 weeks from now, week 13 against the Texans in Houston. The scenes there are going to be absolutely banana lands. I assume he is going to get booed aggressively, but, there's probably going to be like 7 Texans fans there. So will he even hear it? Who knows? If you don't have a legitimate quarterback that you are trustworthy of, and you think your team's going to the playoffs, you better add Deshaun Watson, because this motherfucker, I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 quarterback, but he has top 5 quarterback upside when healthy with the weapons in Cleveland and a pretty decent offensive line. Now we move to the tight end position, headlined by Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears going up against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. 59% owned, tight end number 1 in half PPR last week, tight end 13 and half PPR points per game. Week 10 up against the Lions. He kicked the door down, 4 receptions on 7 targets for 74 yards, and not 1, but 2 tugs. 2 tugs in one day. Call him Robert Kraft. He did get hurt in that game, which scared me. It was like, oh shit, is he going down? Is he yelling timber? Shout out to Mr. 305, Mr. Pitbull. But nah, it seems like he's good. 3 weeks in a row, back-to-back-to-back games with at least 1 touchdown. 2 games in a row, which is back-to-back games with 2 touchdowns, and back-to-back games with 19 or more half PPR points. I loved Cole Kmet going into the season. I was on my knees giving this guy the metaphorical gawk dick suck 9,000. I loved Cole Kmet. I was like, oh, look at all this possibility. This, that, the other thing. Yada, yada, yada. And I looked like a complete and utter fucking doofus. But now we're in week 11, and it's Cole Kmet season, baby. Banging the drum aggressively. I love Kmet up against a garbage Atlanta Falcons defense. At number 2, we got Foster Moreau. Foster Moreau sounds like he would be a character in Game of Thrones, in my opinion, of the turn your volume down, the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. Mile high, 17% owned. Tight end 5.5 PPR last week. Tight end 30.5 PPR points per game on the season. Darren Waller's on the IR and will be missing at least the next 3 contests. Might be Dunsky for the season because the Raiders' season is in the fucking garbage. You just lost to Jeff Saturday on a Sunday. Jeff Sunday, baby. Week 10 versus Indy. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 43 yards and a score. The weapons in Las Vegas are depleted. They're very depleted. They are incredibly bad. It is Devontae Adams and Foster Moreau versus the world. The Broncos defense legit, so I'm not trying to shit on the Broncos defense. They're the only good spot about this team. Besides their kicker. Their kicker's also pretty good. I'm still fine with Foster Moreau this week. I don't know why I made that face. But fuck it, we're not editing it out. At number 3, we got Hayden Hurst of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, 48% owned. Hayden Hurst was on bye last week. He was in part of that bye-pocalypse. So we got to hop back in the time machine, go back to week number 9 for his stats. Tight end 17.5 PPR in week 9, tied with Noah Gray of the Chiefs. Tight end 14.5 PPR points per game, tied with Double J, Jawan Johnson. Week 9 up against the Panthers in a bad game for the Bengals. If you remember, the Bengals got molly-whopped in that spot. 5 receptions on 5 targets for 35 yards. Pittsburgh Steelers defense is back. I'm back. Shout out Cam Newton. They're back. But I still think Hayden Hurst is in for a solid spot without Jamar Chase. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at Notorious FNTSY. You got any questions about week 11? Smash the comment section, as if that makes sense. Just fucking leave questions in the comment section. I love talking to you guys down there. I love you all so much. Deep down in my heart, it means the world to me. The support I see on all these videos, it makes my day. I love all you guys, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you guys for everything. It's week 11. We're still chugging on, baby. We're going to win our fantasy championships. So hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' day. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll be back tomorrow with a bunch more videos for Tuesday. I love you guys so much. Have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, hit that outro. Goodbye.